I am recording this testimony because I do not want another species to learn this lesson the way the draelith did. My name is Reth Valanis. I am a senior archivist of the Galactic Concord, and I have spent 4,000 years documenting the rise and fall of civilizations across this galaxy. I have seen empires built and broken. I have seen proud species reduced to scattered refugees. But I have never seen anything like what I am about to describe. Let me begin with something important. There used to be a species called the draelith. I say used to be, because while some of them still exist, everything that made them a civilization is gone. Their cities, their governments, their history, carved into the stone of their ancient temples, all of it erased in a single day. And they did it to themselves, not with their own weapons, with their own arrogance. The Galactic Concord maintains a classified registry. We call it the Dormant Predator Index. It is a list of species that appear peaceful on the surface but carry markers, biological, psychological, technological, suggesting they are capable of extraordinary destruction if provoked. Most species on this list sit in the lower categories. A note in their file. A quiet warning to be cautious. Humanity was not in a lower category. Humanity was alone at the very top, in a classification we invented specifically for them. Class Omega. The official recommendation was 3 words long. Do not provoke. Most species laughed when they heard this. I understand why. Humans were friendly. They showed up to galactic trade summits with warm smiles and strange baked goods they insisted on sharing. They sent medical ships to worlds suffering from plague. They gave away agricultural technology to species that could not afford it. They wrote poetry and painted pictures and made music that, I will admit, sometimes moved even me. A poet is not a predator. That is what everyone believed. The draelith believed it most of all. They were a reptilian species, tall and proud, with 3 centuries of conquest behind them. They had built their empire by defeating every neighbor foolish enough to challenge them. 9,000 warships, 14 billion citizens spread across 2 beautiful homeworlds, and dozens of thriving colonies. They understood the galaxy through a single lens: strength. If you were strong, you took what you wanted. If you were weak, you stepped aside. This philosophy had never failed them. When their expansion reached the Orion Spur, they found a small human installation sitting on a mineral deposit they desired. Outpost Caldera, it was called. A modest facility on a barren moon, home to 2,300 humans, miners mostly, scientists, families. There was a small security team of 40 Marines, the kind of token force you station somewhere to discourage pirates, not to fight a war. The draelith sent a formal demand: leave the system or be removed. The humans, through proper diplomatic channels, declined. They were polite about it. They cited Concord settlement law. They offered to negotiate shared mining rights. They suggested a meeting. The draelith heard that politeness and concluded that humans were afraid. I want you to understand this, because it is the core of everything that followed. The draelith did not misread the situation because they were stupid. They misread it because they could not imagine a species that was polite by choice rather than by necessity. In their world, you were polite to those stronger than you. Humans were polite to everyone. The draelith assumed this meant humans considered everyone stronger than them. They were so terribly wrong. A strike group of 60 draelith warships arrived in the Verith system. They surrounded the moon. They jammed all outgoing communications. Their commander, a decorated officer named Warlord Sithon, broadcast a single message to the outpost: surrender or burn. The 40 Marines activated the outpost's defense grid. It was a modest system, designed for pirates, not a battle fleet. They held for 11 minutes. I want you to sit with that number. 40 soldiers with a small defense grid held off 60 warships for 11 minutes. The draelith expected it to take seconds. When the outpost's dome was breached, the atmosphere escaped into space. Emergency barriers sealed what sections they could. The Marines fought in darkness, in silence, in the freezing absence of air, dragging civilians into sealed shelters while firing at draelith ground forces that outnumbered them 100 to 1. 4,000 draelith shock troops landed against those 40 Marines, and a handful of armed miners. The Marines held their ground until the very last one of them fell. By the time it was over, they had taken more than 300 draelith soldiers with them, 40 against 4,000, and the draelith paid dearly for every corridor. When the silence finally came, 1,847 humans were gone. Among them were 311 children. 453 survivors were taken as prisoners. The draelith recorded the entire assault, edited it into propaganda, and broadcast it across their empire as proof that humanity was a soft species, easily conquered. That broadcast was the single greatest mistake in the recorded history of our galaxy. Earth received word. 19 hours later, a Concord courier ship delivered the news through official channels. We expected outrage. We expected demands for reparation, threats, and a rapid military buildup. Our mediators prepared ceasefire templates. Our diplomats drafted frameworks for negotiation. Instead, we received silence. For 6 standard days, Earth said nothing. No transmissions. No fleet movements. No diplomatic messages. Nothing. Our ambassador stationed on Earth, a skilled diplomat named Tene, who had served there for 12 years, reported something that disturbed me more than any declaration of war could have. She said the humans she spoke with were calm. Not the calm of shock, not the calm of grief. A different kind of calm. They smiled at her. They asked about her family. They thanked her for her concern. She filed her report, and I remember every word of it, because it was the shortest diplomatic assessment I have ever read. It said, "They are not angry. They are something else. I am requesting immediate evacuation." During those 6 days, our intelligence analysts detected something unprecedented. Every human shipyard in known space went dark. Communications between human systems switched to a code no Concord agency could break. And we employ the finest cryptographers of 40 species. Civilian shipping routes emptied overnight. Human freighters, cargo vessels, passenger liners, all of them simply vanished from their usual lanes, as if someone had turned off every light in a city at once. The draelith noticed none of this. They were busy celebrating. On the 7th day, the draelith detected a fleet entering their sovereign space. It was not what they expected. 200 human warships. But these were not the modest, defensively designed vessels that appeared in the Concord's registries. These were something else entirely. Ships that had been hidden, built in shipyards that did not officially exist, kept off every record and every scan. They were enormous. The largest of them dwarfed a draelith dreadnought by a factor of 4. They were dark, angular, and featureless, as if someone had built a warship and then stripped away everything that was not essential for a single purpose. The fleet arranged itself in a perfect sphere around the draelith home system and broadcast one message on every frequency, in every language the draelith used. "You have 12 hours to return our people. Alive, all of them." Warlord Sithan rallied his full fleet. 9,000 warships against 200. He broadcast his response with the confidence of a commander who had never tasted defeat. He promised to display the remains of human soldiers as trophies in his capital. He should not have said that. The draelith sent 2,000 ships in the first wave. The human fleet did not scatter. It did not maneuver. Each ship simply selected its targets and fired. I have reviewed the sensor data from that engagement more times than I care to admit, and I still do not fully understand what I am looking at. The human weapons passed through draelith shields as if the shields were not there. The first wave ceased to exist in 9 minutes. The draelith sent everything they had. All 7,000 remaining warships. Every vessel in their civilization, moving at once. The engagement lasted 2 hours. When it was over, the human fleet had lost 11 ships. The draelith had lost everything. Every single vessel. 9,000 warships, the pride of a 3-century empire, reduced to drifting silence in 120 minutes. While the fleet battle raged, a separate human team conducted a rescue operation on the surface. 600 operators breached the facility where the 453 prisoners were held. They entered the compound, neutralized the guards, and extracted every single prisoner. The operation took 4 minutes. Not one additional human life was lost. When the 12 hours expired, every human prisoner was aboard a medical ship, and the draelith had no fleet, no orbital defenses, and no ability to resist what came next. The human fleet broadcast its final message. It was not a threat. It was not an ultimatum. It was simply a statement of fact. Your government ordered an assault on a civilian outpost. 1,847 people are gone, including 311 children. The doctrine has been activated. It is not revenge. It is arithmetic. I learned about the doctrine of absolute response afterward, when humanity declassified it as part of the post-event record. It was not a battle plan. It was a philosophical principle, written into Earth's military charter, on the very first day humanity made contact with alien life. It stated, in cold and precise language, that if a hostile species took the lives of human civilians and captured human prisoners, the response would not be proportional. It would be total. The aggressor's ability to ever pose a threat again would be reduced to absolute zero. Not through negotiation, not through occupation, through the complete removal of capability at the source. The most chilling part was this. The doctrine was written during peacetime, by calm people sitting in quiet rooms, who hoped with all their hearts that it would never be used. It existed because humanity understood something about its own nature that other species did not. They were not the gentle poets the galaxy believed them to be. They were predators who had chosen to be kind. And they built the doctrine as a leash on their own fury. A pre-calculated response so total in its scope that no human leader would ever need to make a decision in the heat of grief or rage. The targets were already selected. The mathematics was already complete. The weapons were already in position, waiting in the dark between stars for a signal that everyone prayed would never come. The signal came. 2 projectiles, launched during the 6 days of silence, crossed the void at nearly the speed of light. They arrived at their targets within seconds of each other. The first reached draelith Prime. The second reached draelith Secundus. I will not describe what happened when they struck. I will say only this. Where there had been 2 living worlds, full of cities and oceans and forests, and 14 billion souls, there was nothing. Not ruins, not debris, nothing that could be called a world any longer. The planets did not break apart. They simply ceased to exist as places where life could ever stand again. The colonial populations survived, roughly 900 million draelith across scattered outposts and mining stations, now a species without a home, without a government, without a fleet, and without any hope of ever waging war again. The human fleet withdrew, quietly, without celebration, without a single broadcast of triumph. They simply turned and left, the way a surgeon leaves an operating room once the procedure is complete. The Concord held an emergency session. Hundreds of species demanded that humanity be condemned. The speeches went on for 16 hours. Accusations of barbarism, demands for sanctions, calls for humanity's expulsion from the Concord. The human ambassador, a small, composed woman named Dr. Lena Vasquez, sat through every single speech without speaking. When it was finally her turn, she stood, looked across that vast chamber full of representatives from 1,000 worlds, and said this: "Every species in this room has buried its children because a stronger neighbor decided they were weak. Every one of you wished, in your darkest moment, that someone would make it stop. We made it stop, not only for ourselves, for every species that will never be targeted by the draelith again. You may condemn us if you wish, but you will sleep more safely tonight, and every one of you knows it." She sat down. The chamber voted. The motion to condemn humanity failed. Not narrowly. It failed by an overwhelming margin, because she was right, and because every single ambassador in that room understood, with perfect and terrible clarity, what would happen to their own homeworld if they made themselves an enemy of Earth. I have documented 4,000 years of galactic history. I have recorded acts of cruelty and courage in equal measure, but I have never encountered anything like humanity. Not because of what they did. Other species have ended worlds. But because of the control, the precision, the silence. They did not rage. They did not boast. They carried out a doctrine written by calm minds in a time of peace, and they did it with the cold, measured efficiency of a species that understood its own capacity so deeply that it had automated its own response. Because it did not trust itself to show restraint in the moment. I am filing this testimony in the permanent archive, and I am attaching to it a personal recommendation, which I have never done in 4,000 years of service. Do not mistake their kindness for weakness. Do not mistake their poetry for softness. Do not mistake their laughter for a lack of steel behind their eyes. And above all else, above everything else in this galaxy, Do not touch their children.